Hey everyone, I am reading Midnight in the House of Lang, a dystopian romance novel by Bree Lewandowski, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. In 2024, on the western side of the United States, cataclysm occurred. A geyser's eruption covered half the North American continent. In its wake, not only was America forced to adjust, but the rest of the world as well. Steam engineering began again. Some countries created alternate fuels. Life evolved. Europe reverted to older ways and customs. We begin in the year of our Lord 3034, Vienna, Austria. Chapter 1. It won't be the same. Late afternoon light, weakened by the sudden arrival of autumn, streamed in through long Vietnam blinds, illuminating a crimson and gold carpet. Upwards along golden filtered walls it reached, bringing luster to designs painted hundreds of years ago. Henrietta, with little apparent regard for her silken afternoon gown, had tucked her legs beneath her plump frame and repeated the statement. "It might not be," Jeanette replied. "But what would you do? Things like this happen to everyone when they happen, not just—" She waved her hand towards one of the palace windows, clearly meaning war affected royalty and the common man. "I don't understand. Everything's getting more expensive," Henrietta pouted, smoothing her dress like a preening chickadee. "Papa even said we might not be able to go to Barcelona in winter." Janet scoffed. "You're impossible. Italy and Germany ravaged Switzerland, and now they're trying to lay France bare. You should be on your knees at night, thanking God we've been able to keep them out." From the corner of the room, Thea groaned. "Did we wake you?" Jonna asked. Sitting up, she sighed. "I closed my eyes when Henry started going on about those two bows she keeps at arm's length." Henry giggled, wriggling further into the chair. Emperor Thaddeus' granddaughter continued. "And now," she gestured towards Janet, who came quickly, mocking a reprimanded servant, dropping to her knees, "I'm awakened to the same conversation I've been listening to for months." Janet offered the tops of her hands with sweeping dramatics and declared, "Strike me if you will, ma'am." They brushed her hands away and stood. "Honestly, though," Janet continued, "how can you expect us to talk of anything else? Libertarians are marching in the streets. Their propaganda sheaves litter everything. On the radio this morning, I heard there were explosions in the third quarter. Those poor people, what were they to do? What they have is barely anything as it is." Round brown eyes, rich for such an earthen color, met the zealous stare, and Thea nodded. "I know." Tugging at the robe covering her afternoon dress, a yellow frock, simple in design, made elaborate by intricate black threadwork, she sighed. Henry shifted in her spot, and her fair face squelched in discomfort. "Explain it to me, Thea. Pretend I'm a simpleton." "She won't have to pretend much," Janet remarked with a grin. "You quit. Come, Thea. You have tea with your grandfather in minutes, and then a horseman's ball to get ready for. Be quick. Why this war? Papa says I wouldn't understand." A smart retort fell from Janet's lips, followed by a swift look to Thea. It wasn't Henrietta's fault she'd been wrapped in lamb's wool all her life. "Do you remember the European Collective Council Italy petitioned for?" Henry nodded. "When they were granted approval, Italy revealed they'd been mining the Dolomites for area ore. Financially, the Prime Minister had known his country was in trouble, and scientists made him promises about the metal. Well, they were right, and Italy has been wealthy from it for years now. So, if they have all this money, why? They want more manpower, more ire. They want countries to give up their nationhood. Henry, Italy wants to create a conglomerate, monster nation to be a power on the world stage with America and Asia. During the council, country representatives declined, but Germany made an alliance with Italy afterwards. Supposedly, they have the manpower and airships to force the issue, if Italy will fund them, which they are. So now," Janet jumped in, "so now submit to be submitted." Slowly, Henry erased the creases forming on her dress, and her tone lost its playful tilt. "I guess we're very lucky nothing has happened here yet." "Exactly," Janet said. He tossed her robe onto the davenport, perhaps tossing the conversation away as well. Smoothing hair that wasn't out of place, she told her friends she'd see them all at the ball later. Both young women, instantly formal, dropped into curtsies, their heads bowed till Thea left the room. The same filigree pattern of her private study flowed down the upper halls, in alternating shades of gold and orange, blending in and out. As a child, Thea used to run down the carpeted corridors, watching the patterns keep up, seeming to come alive and promising her the best race every time. Actually, the mural was painstakingly retouched. Grandfather did not share in the belief as his father had that dignity came from age and decay, except funding necessary to keep troops armed and fed at the borders pulled from general upkeep. Pulled from many areas, really. Tabloids and radio programs chided her grandfather for even throwing the horseman's ball. Surely the money could be better spent. Thea believed it could. But she also understood her grandfather when he said certain things were important for people to expect and enjoy when everything surrounding them boded so ill. Down a back staircase used by servants, Thea neared the sitting room she and her grandfather shared an hour together in each day. People had approached him for that. She belonged in the charge of a governess. Surely the child didn't need to see her grandfather every day. An emperor had matters of country and state to attend. Yet, while Arthur had been sent to a military academy in America, Thea was raised sans a governess in the company of her grandfather. While newspapers remarked it was cruel sending Arthur Lang overseas for his education, if not a smack in the face to the culture and history he could learn amongst his own, those chattering voices had never been able to say Thea Lang lacked any of the social graces a young woman of her lineage ought to boast of. Affectionately known as the Sunrise Room, the relatively modest parlor provided solace for Thaddeus when the wisdom of the court proved too much for his sensibilities. Only select servants were allowed in the space, ones who had been in his service when he stepped down from the throne, only to resume it again after his son's death. Artfully displayed books covered most of the walls. One large window flooded the space with light. No matter what was going on in the castle, what political upheaval or scandal raced like wildfire through the halls onwards to the general public, in this room it was always quiet. Thea relished that. A tray balanced carefully between both hands, one of her grandfather's servants tottered towards the door, a strain to look upon him. When he saw Thea, he sighed in relief. "Ma'am, have you the key? Mine's in my pocket, and I don't trust myself with one hand. Lord knows if I put this tray down, I won't be able to pick it back up." "I'd pick it up for you, Lon," she replied, pulling the intricate skeleton key from a concealed pocket in the folds of her skirt. "Now you know that won't do." "I know. It would never do." For as long as she could remember, Lon had seemed aged. As a little girl, she'd spy his unsteady gait and offer to help, but he'd only smile and repeat the phrase. Nights when grandfather couldn't read her a bedtime fable, Lon's shaking hands made it difficult for him to do so. They always proposed to hold the book, but that wouldn't do. It wouldn't do. She saw his true age now, through his eyes were still bright and his back straight. They let him walk in first. Grandfather raised his hand in a mock reprimand. "If it's oat tea again, Lon, I'll start a war of my own." Grinning and moving towards a richly polished table between two generously sized rocking chairs, the trusted servant replied, "I told Miss Groy first thing this morning you'd banned oat tea from the palace, and she went herself to buy all the black currant tea she could find." With care, he set the tray down. Thaddeus thanked him and said Thea would pour. Dutifully, Lon bowed and backed out of the room. Into matte blue cups, Thea let the fragrant liquid stream, its steam curling upwards. From a fireplace remains of charred logs spit and crackled their last. Each settled into the rocking chairs. April and December enjoyed their aromatic solitude. First cups had been appreciated and seconds poured before Thaddeus inquired of his granddaughter's day. The morning ride had been stunted by her private guard insisting she not near the outermost stretches of the royal border, given rumors of vigilante bands roaming the area. She had also turned down a calling card from Duke Elbridge, to be exact the third from him in a month. "Perhaps he's keen to show off his newly acquired rank. I imagine it will permit him into more parlors than his persona alone." From behind her cup, Thea grinned. "Well, I hope some wide-eyed maid finds that his rank is most agreeable. You might not be able to escape his rank. The Eldridges will be at the ball tonight." Nose crinkled, Thea replied. She understood. It was hardly possible for the father to attend and the son not. However, she might suddenly come down with an irrepressible headache should he ask her to dance. It's a shame Arthur won't be home till tomorrow." "Arthur hates the horseman's ball," Thaddeus replied flatly. "I know. I could sit in disgust with him." "You're not disgusted by the ball, not any ball, ever since you were little. Well, this morning I heard your maid in a panic that she'd forgotten to hem your new dress." Meeting hazel eyes graying with age, she shrugged. "Is it wrong I wanted to enjoy tonight? It might be the last in a long time." "It might." He sipped at the tea and leaned forward. "Grandfather, can we keep them out?" "For as long as we're able, yes. But if they break through our borders, if they come here with their guns and bombs, then the war will have fully arrived in Austria." Standing so quickly the chair rocked sharply, he caught the beloved hands that had wiped tears and held her when the corridors were too long and scary to walk. Now, not this, child." She knew he felt her tremble. She knew he saw the fear lurking behind her like a shadow all these months. If the war came, what if the worst came with it? "We'll dance together tonight, right?" "Of course we will. We'll always dance together," she said, bringing his hands close. Thaddeus stood. "You know there will come a day, but I won't have the war bring that day. Neither would I, darling." Chapter 2. Adjacent to her study, separated by a door, was Thea's bedchamber. It had been hers since Thaddeus resumed the throne and thought it was wise she no longer sleep in rooms that had been her own before the death of her parents. She remembered the day he led her to one of the upper corridors and said she might take any room she pleased. For a child of 8, the task was daunting and exciting. Eventually, she decided she might like to have one of the rooms with a parlor attached to it, in case she should take the serious arts of sewing, knitting, or coloring. Everyone knew such things could not be accomplished genuinely in a space where one slept and made their toilet. Commending her on such consideration, Thaddeus called for the rooms to be made over immediately. The bed was much bigger now, and pink lace curtains she believed were the epitome of elegance had given way to burgundy damask ones. Aside from that, however, the room still maintained modest elegance, balancing the masculine stone-set fireplace. Alone with her thoughts, the morning's conversations pricked at her. She'd brushed off Henry. It wasn't fair. The poor dear had been kept from understanding anything beyond fashionable trends, and now her plush world was crumbling. Thea had been desperate with grandfather. She could have wept in front of him. Didn't he have enough cares without having to fret over his granddaughter's state of mind? Maybe gunfire and enemy soldiers hadn't made their way into Austria, but the war was here, and the looks on servants' faces and the way people hurried down avenues, how quickly there was no time to stop and chat with a friend on the street corner anymore. An unseen danger loomed, but its foul breath was already here. Shops closed early. Some placed wooden boards over their windows, a few with good reason, too. Renegades feverish with the wealth promised by the Italians and Germans threw bricks at windows. On them scrawled the slogan of this fight: "Embrace or succumb." Pulling pins from the thick coil of hair wound at the nape of her neck, long brown tresses tumbled past her shoulders. Thea turned and looked at the gown lying in wait on her bed. Pressed to perfection, its forest green fabric might have challenged nature herself. A modest scooped neck embroidered with pristine white needlework. The dress was of marvel. She reached for a soft bristled hairbrush, combing through her thoughts. Media accused her grandfather of indulgence, of obstinacy, and senility. Now wasn't the time to keep with tradition, but while the rest of Europe was falling apart, why not cling to that comfort? Tradition partly made up their way of life. Yet how lavish was her gown, how rich. Tradition was modest, heartfelt. "Mindy!" The bedchamber door opened, and a young woman slid in, dropping into a curtsy. "Yes, ma'am?" "I changed my mind. I don't want to wear this. I'll wear my white satin." Mindy's eyes went wide. "Of course, ma'am. I'll have it pressed immediately. But," she interrupted herself by opening the door and ringing the bell from her pocket. A servant came running, only nodding obediently to Mindy's command that her ladyship would wear the white tonight. "But," she continued, folds of verdant green fabric in her arms, "this gown is so lovely." "I don't care. I can't wear it." "Yes, milady, I'll hang it with care." "Don't bother, I don't want it. Take it for yourself." "Ma'am!" "Impress your beau." Mindy looked down. "Or sell it. The fabric would be worth more now than ever." Chin to her chest, her thanks was quietly spoken in contrast to the way she then yelled from the door, demanding the green dress be taken to her room and Lady Thea's white satin be readied. "May I start your hair, milady?" she asked, shutting the door. "Yes, something simple, please." Wholly respondent to the hushed tone of her mistress, Mindy approached with care, taking the thick tresses between her hands and deciding a milkmaid's braid wreathed around her lady's head might do nicely. Thanks.